Hey everybody, sorry for the delay, got hung up a little bit, but happy Lunar New Year. Happy Monday as I'm recording this. One of my New Year's resolutions as far as working on stuff for the channel and doing more streaming is to catch up on the backlog of things that people have sent me but I never got around to doing in 2019 for various reasons, usually just laziness on my part or poor scheduling. So I have one today that is called Challenge Accepted by the Crit Academy, presented by the Crit Academy, and it is a supplement for running skill challenges in your 5th edition game, Dungeons & Dragons. Though I suppose you could port it into other games if you really dig the skill challenge mechanic from 4th edition. I guess maybe I should go over what a skill challenge is, in case you don't know, in case you didn't play 4th edition or you didn't follow people who have ported over. Basically, a skill challenge is a mechanic that could take the place, essentially as a stand-in for a lot more complex game playing. And as a stand-in, what you would do is you're essentially taking a lot of complex interactions that you might have and you're boiling it down to some skill checks. Generally as a group, and you would say, okay, I need so many successes as a group in these certain skills to overcome this challenge. And the challenge could be really anything that you think might match that expectation. I guess what I mean by that is it could be, I think Matt Colville, who I know, I think one of his videos early on was a big, really enjoyed skill challenges, was a big believer in skill challenges as a mechanic, talked about, I think his group, he was running them through escaping from a dungeon that was collapsing around them. So instead of actually running the navigation, okay, left, right, okay, we know this way, we know that way, and running it like you're running your dungeon crawl, instead you boil it down to, okay, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to say, okay, how do you use your various skills to negotiate this crumbling dungeon? And someone might say, okay, I'm going to use my knowledge of architecture, whatever that might be, so that I can figure out which ways are taking us into the better constructed parts, the parts that are more towards the entrance. And roll some dice. Okay, that's great. That works. You guys come here. Okay, now this is happening. Okay, now I'm going to use so that the corridors starting to crumble. I'm going to use acrobatics so I can tumble around and leap over stuff if it's falling and do that. Okay, great. And then someone else might say, oh, I'm going to use my an old school, like your dwarven sense of stone sense to look for slopes that are leading us up. Okay, great, that works. And you would basically go through all of that and you would tally up all the successes that the group gets versus the failures, and you would have thresholds. Okay, if you guys get 5 successes, you succeed. If you guys get 3 failures, you fail, and you can come up with those numbers however you like. And then you would succeed the skill challenge or fail at it, and then you would get to whatever the success state of it is. In the case of the crumbling dungeon, you guys escape out into daylight, and if you have to hit that fail state, maybe you're trapped in some space, and now you have to figure out something else, because there's rocks have crumbled on one side, rocks have crumbled on the other. What do you do? I don't know in his case what the fail state of that dungeon crumbling might have been. Could have been death. Could have been if you guys don't succeed, you get crushed by falling masonry. I don't know, but that's what a skill challenge is. For whatever reason, even though it's one of the more well thought of mechanics of 4th edition, it did not make the leap into 5th edition. But other people have taken it upon themselves through the DM Academy and other things to bring it back into 5th edition, and this is one such supplement. So here we go, Challenge Accepted by Crit Academy. Their credits. I'm going to read just some bits of the intro, because one thing I did notice beforehand, I don't generally look at these before I delve into them, because I really just want to give my first impressions as they happen. But I did look a little bit at the intro, and this apparently builds on another product, and they wanted to give that creator a shout out, so I will extend that shout out. Here they say in their introduction, we want to give a huge shout out to R.P. Davis, creator of Skill Challenges, an adaptation and guide for introducing one of I guess they forgot a "the" there. The greatest hidden secrets in 4th edition. Introducing one. All right. A little bit of a sentence could use a little bit of help. Hidden secrets in 4th edition to 5th edition. His product was a huge inspiration to us here at the Crit Academy. Make sure to check out his amazing product to learn how to make your own skill challenges. Okay, so there you go. So if my or other people's descriptions of skill challenges seem great, maybe check out his product. Maybe I'll see if I can get a hold of it to look at that as well. Here's their write-up on skill challenges. D&D is a game that consists of multiple pillars of play, combat, roleplay, and exploration. This adaptation is designed to help enhance all those various challenges in a controlled and structured format called a skill challenge. In many scenarios, our heroes find themselves in encounters and social situations that resolve entirely around their skills. Other times they are in combat and the challenges add a level of complexity or strategy to the encounter. This supplement contains pre-designed skill challenges that you can fit into your campaigns. What is a skill challenge? Fundamentally, a skill challenge is a kind of encounter similar to a combat encounter. Part of playing the game finds our heroes using skill checks to interact with the world around them. Part of the excitement of D&D is that success or failure is often uncertain. Skill challenges offer the DM a tool to introduce a complex series of changing conditions, keeping track of the results to determine the overall success or failure of a complex collection of challenges over different lengths of time. Whew. And they go on to say that sometimes you need to use tools as opposed to skills, and of course you have powers you can use, so on and so forth. So that's kind of a high-level view, right? But what I said before is more the down and dirty, kind of when you're in the game playing it, you're looking at what a skill challenge is. It's pretty much what I said before. You are going to, if you are a player at a table and your GM is running skill challenges, they will essentially tell you it's a skill challenge. All right, here you go. You got to escape. You got to get away. You got to find this, do that. I need 5 successes. You tell me how your skills, powers, abilities fit into accomplishing this goal. If you make a good argument for it, I will allow it. And then you're going to roll. If you succeed, it's a success. If you fail, it's a failure. And basically, everybody has to participate. I would say that that's probably one of the strengths of a skill challenge as a thing, is that it really does force participation from every player in the group, since everyone has to contribute a role. So it means everybody has to think about how their character can add to this, or hopefully not fail, at least tread water. And you can't hide behind anybody. There's no one who can take your place. Someone else can't say, ooh, I'm a really dexterous rogue, so I've got athletics and acrobatics. Can I just roll those? I mean, sure, if you have to keep going around the table, they'll get a chance to add more skills as they get more successes, but ultimately, everybody on the table has to go. So that way, it can be a good method for getting in players that maybe get lost under other circumstances, as the more strong players with the stronger personalities push to the fore. This is a way to get them involved. Here we are on to malleable skills, which I think they're going to say pretty much what I just said about making an argument for different skills. The bolded section is, if a player offers a reasonable reason of how a skill, spell, or feature could be used and it's not listed, make sure to do your best to allow it. So presumably for each one of the challenges they're going to present, there's going to be a list of skills. They're going to tell you, hey, these are usually the skills that would work, but be open-minded for things that the party may bring to the table if they're thinking outside this particular box, which is good advice. In pretty much every circumstance, you want to be generous, I think, as far as what you allow. And give it a penalty. If you're saying, okay, it's DC 10, and they give some kind of outlandish thing, like, okay, we're trying to run away from the Tarrasque. I use history to determine this, that, and the other. Okay, but, instead of being DC 10, for you, it's DC 15. Essentially, you're at disadvantage. Really, it's little harm done to giving somebody a chance, and you never know, depending on the character, their build and what they have, there might be characters that don't have a particular skill that's going to fit a skill challenge very well. I remember being in that situation in which I had maybe one athletic type skill, but we needed an X amount of successes. So after I used athletics, I was kind of at a loss. And normally you can't repeat them. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to use athletics. It's like you have to use athletics, then you got to figure out something else. So it can be, it can be tough. So the more expansive you can allow players to be, it's nice to let them roll dice. Next, they're going to go over challenge ratings. 2 conditions drive difficulty, complexity, and difficulty class. DC set by the DM. The DC of each skill challenge gives a recommendation, but allows the DM to set the difficulty to whichever level they believe appropriate for their encounter. Here they just give the little table of difficulties and their DCs. If it's very easy, it's 5, easy is 10, etc., etc. Very hard is 25, nearly impossible is 30. And then looking at the complexity gives you a little table so you can judge how many successes and failures to apply. If it's complexity 1, 4 successes and 3 failures is their recommendation. And then they only have 3 levels. On the opposite end of the spectrum, complexity 3, and you need 8 successes, but still only 3 failures. And really, it's just the successes that climb. It goes 4, 6, and 8. So the more complex it is, the more successes you need, but it doesn't give you any more buffer for failures. That's another way to make it more difficult, right? Because even if the check itself is easy, if you need 8 successes and you only can allow 3 failures, that can be tough, depending on the skill set, depending on the party. On to skills. What they have to say about that is, when it comes to running skill challenges, there are some skills that are naturally better suited to specific challenges. For example, persuasion and deception are great tools for getting the support of a high noble to lend you his support while in his council chambers, while athletics in the same situation is less likely to be useful. In the skill challenges, these better suited skills are known as primary skills. While we don't rule out the use of other skills, we all know players can get pretty creative, yes they can. We use these as an outline for the challenge. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I said before, right? They're just giving it a nice name, so we'll probably have a list of primary skills, which are the skills that are most useful, and then, be open to players using other things. Because like I said, if you're in a social situation, the bard and the rogue and maybe another charismatic type class might have a lot of great persuasion and deception or diplomacy, but maybe the barbarian does not. But they might have great intimidation, or they probably don't have great intimidation either. But allow them to think about maybe how they could use something, including if maybe they could burn a rage, and that could be a stand-in for intimidation if they don't have it, if they're not charismatic. Success and failure. In each challenge, a number of skill checks successes is needed before a certain number of failures, determined by its complexity. Below is an overview for total success, and failure conditions. In some cases, specific checks will call out additional effects on the success or failure, such as granting advantage to another skill check. Okay, so they're adding some little bit of complexity here to the skill challenge setup, where they had the idea of total success and regular success, and then failure, and then the ability of one success to add advantage potentially to another roll, and I guess potentially the opposite is true. I'm not sure. Maybe a failure could add disadvantage to a roll. Let's see. What are they calling total success? Total success is when the characters complete the skill challenge without a single failure. Okay. So at this point, right, it's just about counting successes. If you make it all the way through, essentially perfectly, maybe you get a little extra juice out of it. And then success is you succeed, but some failures are mixed in. Then failures is when you don't get enough successes. They say, consider the success details and use them to explain the failure. If the success of acrobatics described the character as vaulting over an obstacle, a failure may mean that a character's foot got caught and they trip and fall to the ground. Prepare for failure. Failure should never stop the characters from proceeding, but instead create a new branch to the story. Failure is inevitable. Use this as a tool to drive the story forward, but at a cost. Very true. Anything that when you look at something and you're looking at this obstacle, and success or failure is going to dictate whether the party can proceed, you will want some sort of fail forward state. And that doesn't mean that they succeed even though they fail. Fail forward can mean a lot of things. It can mean that, but usually it's that whatever happens in that failure, the story isn't blocked. It's not that, okay, we got to get to the other side of this room, but we can't open the door, so now we're just sitting in the room, twiddling our thumbs because we can't open it. You want something to happen. It could be a secret door opens and guards come pouring out. So if they can defeat those guards, maybe that secret door will lead them to some area. It's probably more difficult, but gives them some other access to going forward. But you always want to give them a way forward. It may not be the best way. It could possibly be a much worse way than if they'd succeeded, but you just don't want to block them, right? You're trying to do everything you can to avoid just dead space with parties just sitting there. So don't create situations in which, hey, if they fail, there's no other options. Make sure if you're going to use something like this, or really anything at all, that you're pushing, things can be pushed forward and in different directions. All right, did I miss something here? Oh, here, I guess I should read this. Running a skill challenge. Beginning a skill challenge is no different to any other encounter. It's structured in a way that once you learn it, you can easily break it up over several sessions with other encounters in between. That's interesting. An example would be a long negotiation with a local noble to gain their trust and support while fending off the orc attack on her city. The nature of skill challenges is thus that you can use the actions of the characters to directly influence the encounters. In the previous example, maybe the local noble is impressed by the character's actions to defend off the orcs and protect the city. This could lead to the DCs of the challenge being lowered during the next negotiation or gaining advantage on the checks. So I would consider it like a compound skill challenge, which is interesting. I don't remember seeing those before, in which you would have a skill challenge that would cross multiple sessions or take place asynchronously, and that you could talk to the noble a bit, then leave, do something else, then come back and talk to the noble a little bit more. So that's an interesting wrinkle. Let me see here. They also say when running skill challenges, it is important to ensure that every character gets a chance to engage. Yep, I've never seen them run where they didn't, but again, different tables, different GMs, different styles. Like I said, every time I played them, everybody pretty much had to participate. If you had a character and they were present, they weren't physically somewhere else, then they had to participate. But it's a good thing to hammer in there. This is your way to getting all your players involved in something. So don't let just the people who are very, strong personalities just take over and do it for everyone. Make sure everybody gets their chance to shine or stumble in the skill challenge. Let's see, what else do they have here? Okay, so they're saying, I guess they're saying that you could have some skill challenges that only apply to a single PC or subset. I've never seen them run that way, but yeah, obviously you can, and probably people did. To me, I think it just makes more sense as a group challenge because I don't know. All the examples I've seen pretty much pertain to groups. I suppose you could do it with something like, hey, you're picking this lock and it's complicated, so you're going to need to make 3 lock picking checks, something like that nature, but it seems like you're just rolling the same skill multiple times. I'm not sure how that would work. Maybe there will be examples of something like that given later on. We shall see. There they're going to mention skill challenges in combat. A skill challenge is a great way to enhance a combat encounter. This, again, is another thing that I have not seen, so I'm very much intrigued by this. Consider a room containing zombies and a poison gas trap that's filling the room. Some of the party can focus on keeping the zombies at bay, while others focus on disabling the gas trap before they are all poisoned or suffocated. This adds a level of complexity to an otherwise standard zombie slaying encounter. Since the zombies don't breathe, the trap isn't of concern to them at all, and becomes a powerful tool for them during the encounter. This one's interesting because my brain tells me, my intuition tells me just run this as combat with this added thing of how do you get rid of the gas, and then you already have sort of a turn structure because you're in combat. So instead of taking turns in a skill challenge, you're just taking turns on your initiative. I would say it's a bit more flexible because characters could choose on a whim whether to engage with the zombies or with the gas trap and back and forth. As opposed to this where it seems like, I'm not sure what that is. Is it just that everyone's in combat, but then you could choose to spend your round doing the skill challenge instead, and you still need X amount of successes? I'll have to see how it works in practice. I'm not sure why I would do it this way, but maybe I think the benefit is, right, that you're calling out players, hey, take advantage of all the skills in your toolbox, which they might not think of in combat. So you're opening up and saying, okay, we know this combat's going on, but this other element also needs to be dealt with. And really look at your sheet and see what skills you have that could be helpful here. Maybe if it was just regular combat, we were running it there, people might just default back to their strengths and not do that. I'm not sure, but I'll have to see it. But it's an interesting idea. So I guess we're getting into skill challenges now. Let me just skip down one. So the first one they have here, I will go over. It's called Defenders in Need. The priestess turns her head to the pews, gesturing with her holy symbol as she bids you to sit. Why is it you seek the aid of my Templars? There's a little intro. The lead. The setup. The characters are attempting to gain the assistance of an NPC. The challenge's time span can vary from a short conversation to a stretch of days of negotiations, as they mentioned before. So you could leave and come back. It's possible the characters will be assigned tasks to complete to earn the NPC's favor. The characters need the NPC to provide assistance to help overcome their challenge. So that's the goal. And obviously you could replace the Priestess and the Templars with any PC that they might need assistance from. Might need troops or men or I suppose anything at all, right? They're calling this Complexity 2, which means you need 6 successes before 3 failures. And the primary skills are Deception, Persuasion, and Insight. So those are the ones that they're looking at. These are the ones that they should be using. But obviously you're open to other ones. I would have thought Diplomacy might have been one of those primary skills. It seems to be reflected in the setup. The characters, might undertake tasks to help. Some way of trading of services seems very much diplomacy. But here they're giving, let's see what they say about it. So they say, okay, they're the primary skills. Now they're going to go give us some bullet points. And it looks like they're grading some of these on whether they're hard or easy or moderate. So Deception actually is hard, even though it's listed as a primary skill. The character attempts to encourage the NPC to aid your quest using false information, a promise of support on another issue, some sort of inspiration on a rival, perhaps pretend to know someone of importance to them. Okay, so they're lying to get. They think they're going to try to use some lies, some mistruths or half truths to get over. But that one they're saying is difficult. History. This one they're saying is easy. The character makes a remark about a significant event from the NPC's past. And they're saying this skill can only be used once. I see. So they're going to tell us which ones. I've always played the skill challenges, or the ones I've played in, that you can really only use each skill once. But it seems like here they're saying you could use Deception multiple times if you wanted to. And when I mean once per character. But maybe they're saying that in this one, History can only be used once by the group, period, right? You can only call out and get that little connection one time. The next time somebody does it, just not as impressive. Insight is a moderate DC. The character is able to empathize with the Priestess and use that knowledge to encourage the aid needed. Success, the character learns that any intimidation check will fail. Interesting. So there's one which they are going to get a success, and then success on the Insight is going to tell them that, hey, don't use intimidation. Intimidation ain't going to get you where you need to go. So that's a good one to know. And then intimidation is giving an automatic failure. The Priestess Whoa, got some feedback here. Hold on. Yeah, there we go. All right, sorry about that. I was going to unplug my headphones because I was hearing myself echoing in the past, and I didn't realize my audio was on through my laptop speakers and got a little bit of that niceness. Anyway, back to intimidation. So essentially, if you succeed on your insight check here, it's going to tell you, yeah, intimidation's not the way to go. Don't do it. If you do try to intimidate, it's going to fail. The priestess refuses to be intimidated. She's going to stand firm and inform them they will be removed if they continue to threaten or intimidate her in any way. And it's an auto failure. This is one of those cases that's interesting. I don't know if I appreciate an auto failure like that, but I would maybe make it the super difficult. I think that everyone... I have a hard time believing that you couldn't find some way of intimidating them. It's just about it being really, really hard. So I would rather say, hey, you know what? It's just going to be ridiculously hard. And if somebody just decides, hey, what? I'm doing it anyway, then more power to them. It will probably fail. If I give them that 35, whatever, the super high difficulty one, depending on their level, it might be treated the same as an auto failure anyway, since they can't reach the number. And if they are higher level, then maybe they can. They're the one person who can intimidate them. They've never seen her intimidated before, but she's intimidated now. So I like to give things a chance. Just make it a really small chance. But here they've said no dice. Persuasion gets a moderate difficulty. The character entreats the priestess for aid in their quest, describing how failure could affect her and her interests, indicating the dangers to the locals if you aren't successful. If you succeed, the next history check made during the skill challenge has advantage. So if you hadn't done history yet and you used persuasion, you'll get a bump to the next person who's doing a history check. I wonder here if you're supposed to know that and pass it on, or if it's kind of a hidden gem. In other words, if I persuade her and I talk about her interests and how this affects her and indicating the dangers to the locals if you're not successful, is the feedback from the GM okay, and if you do a history check, you'll be successful? Or is it just okay, and then if the next person does history, it's kind of interesting how much of this is meta you're going to pass on and how much of it is they have to figure out. Because is it the character saying, getting a wink, wink, nudge, nudge to the other character saying, okay, like probe her history, right? Or maybe you say instead, oh, you realize that if you can pull up this event that happened to her, this will work, right? So in that case, maybe you're kind of hinting that it's history, but you're not saying you make a history check, or are you just supposed to say, okay, next guy, if you make a history check, this is what will happen. Some guidance on that might have been helpful, but obviously with GMs, you can run it however you like. If you get a total success, they agreed to provide aid that is within reason to the characters. Okay. Provide aid that is within reason. All right. Success, so this one you succeed, but you don't succeed perfectly. They agreed to provide aid, but there is a special request in return. So there you have a cost attached. So the first one, it's sort of help without strings. Next one is help with some strings. Failure is no help. And then the encounter is actually more difficult. I guess it really depends how you're going to run that next encounter. I'll probably just have said, they don't get aid. They came to get aid, they don't get it. And maybe have I would probably have a total, it seems like if you're going to have a total success state, maybe have a total failure state, which would then be the difficulty is made worse. Not only are they not getting help, but the townsfolk are not even, or even less helpful, or almost downright hostile or something of that nature. But there you have it. That is Skill Challenge Defenders in Hell. So let's go through. I'm going to go a few of these. Oh, this one looks interesting. Okay, this one's a different. So I think what I'll do is I'll try to pick some of these skill challenges of different types. So that one we had essentially a social encounter. You're looking for aid. Do you get it? And then we're looking at this one now, which is called Blizzard, which is an environmental skill challenge. So let's see what they say. Okay. After several hours on your journey, you feel the temperature sharply drop. The wind picks up and snow begins to fall in buckets. You catch sight on the horizon of what appears to be a stark white wall that reaches up to the sky. A blanket of snow, the area beyond no longer visible. Each moment that passes brings the blizzard closer. So that is the lead. The setup is the characters are caught in the middle of a blizzard and must use their knowledge and skills to survive the harsh conditions. Okay. Harsh conditions. Oh, let's see. Whoops, I lost my spot for a second. Oh, sorry. Must use their knowledge and skills to survive the harsh conditions while they seek either a place to seek shelter. Whoops. I think there's a little bit of an extra seek in there, or their final destination. Each round represents a minute, hour, or day at the DM's discretion. That's nice. So you could, again, this could be something that takes place over a long period of time, or it could be minutes. You're up to you. You make the call. No characters can gain the benefits of a short or long rest while within the storm and without shelter. So there's a added carrot to them figuring this way out, because you're not getting long rest out here. Presumably not a short rest either. They say that. Somehow I missed that, even though I read it. So yeah, no rests at all. This one is another complexity 2, so you need 6 successes before 3 failures. You need double your successes. double the successes of any failures, and then don't get 3. So 6 successes, 3 failures. The hazard is Constitution, moderate DC. The characters must stave off the debilitating effects of the freezing temperature, falling hailstones, and vicious winds. Failure, the character loses 1 hit die. Okay. I'm assuming that's not permanent. Primary skills: athletics, constitution, nature, and survival. Okay, so we have a blizzard. I'm not sure what they mean by hazard. I guess it just means what's at stake is their constitution. They lose a hit die. So don't be out in this blizzard if you only have 1 hit die. I don't know if there's rules for losing and gaining back hit dice. I guess you just have to come up with that yourself. On to their bullet points. They have athletics as a moderate difficulty check. The character helps create a path using their brute strength, leading the way through snowdrifts, moving or jumping over fallen trees or rocky outcroppings. Makes sense. Failure, the character loses a hit die. Ouch. So you're exerting yourself physically to help forge a path through this mess, but that extra exertion means that it takes a toll on you. This would probably be something that if someone was saying, okay, I want to do this, I would probably give that warning. So someone says, okay, I want to get out in front, and I'm going to use my shield, and I'm just going to basically just bull my way through these snow drifts so that everyone else can walk more easily. And I, as a GM, say, okay, you can make an athletics check, but keep in mind, if you fail this athletics check, you are exerting yourself even more than everyone else, and that will hurt you. That exertion, if you can't do this and you're going to get stuck, then that exertion is going to come back to bite you. So be aware of that, right? Because that's something I think would maybe be somewhat obvious if you go out there and you start running around. If it's working, it's great. If you get bogged down in the ice and snow and the rocks and the trees, then you're liable to take the worst of the storm in the process. There's a medicine check, which is easy. The character helps another character deal with the extreme conditions, bandaging wounds from hailstones or sprained ankles from stumbling through the snow. On a success, the targeted character gains advantage on their next Constitution saving throw. The DC for this skill increases by 1 level. So you can use it multiple times, and each time you use it, it's going to get harder and harder until it finally becomes impossible. That's an interesting way to do it. I kind of like that. I think I'd like that for a lot of things, maybe even as the default. First person who uses it gets it at whatever we think the setting is. In this case, easy. Next person, it's not as easy anymore. Next person after that, it's even harder. I like that idea of scaling it. It allows you to potentially double uses, but at a penalty. So and I think you might think, okay, I have a high athletics, so I should make the first athletics check. But then you think, no, wait. Let the people who are terrible at athletics try it first, and I'll try to keep it in reserve because I am more likely to be able to succeed at the much harder later stage check than the people who are poor. So let the poor people do it first. Interesting. Add some interesting possibilities, interesting decision making to the mix. So I like that, and I might actually use that in other spots if I were running skill challenges. Nature is hard. The character studies the terrain. That would seem hard since you're in the middle of a blizzard. Use their knowledge of the wilderness to help lead the party to shelter. Success, each character has advantage on their next hazard saving throw. I see. And then survival, which is moderate. The character navigates a path and helps the party traverse hazards. Okay, so the same thing, except instead of bulldozing your path, you are finding the natural creases and paths and trails that you can use to your advantage. The interesting thing is this hazard, but they don't say when this hazard kicks in, how often it kicks in. Maybe I missed it in the intro if they're going to have multiple of these hazards, but that would be probably something that I would want to know is every round everyone has to make this hazard check? Is it only under certain conditions that they have to make a hazard check? I'm reading it again, and it doesn't say the cycle. It just says there's a hazard. And it says what the hazard is, but it doesn't say when that hazard activates or how often it activates. Be good to know. If you succeed with a total success, you find your way out of the storm into shelter or the destination, whichever is closest, and you get protection from the blizzard. If you succeed but not totally, you find their way out of the storm to some sort of shelter or their destination, but you lose a hit die. And then failure, find your way out of the storm somewhere, but you suffer exhaustion. The beating from the blizzard has worn on the party and caused them to stumble into a monster's lair. All right, so you gained a level of exhaustion, and now you got to potentially fight something. So you can see here again, they're using that fail forward style technique, right? On the failure, they're not just stuck in the blizzard dying. They found shelter, but it is not the shelter that they want. On a success, they almost should call it mixed success. They're going to find shelter, but they still take some damage along the way. And if they succeed with no failures, they essentially make it out unscathed, assuming they didn't take any hazard fails during the actual challenge. That's Blizzard. This one, okay, so here's one. This looks like this one is about research. It's called Discovering Secret Lore. So we had one that was a social encounter. Now we had one that was an environmental encounter. So let's look at this one, which would be a research, potentially a downtime or some kind of research in investigation kind of skill challenge. Discovering secret lore. You are unable to recall any lore, history, or information on the topic which you seek. It's time to hit the books and do some thorough investigative research to help solve the mystery before you. There's the lead, the setup. The characters must try to gather clues and information they need to advance the story. This involves the research in libraries, seeking out old sages or scholars, and consulting with lore masters. Their goal might be to learn a foe's greatest weakness, a secret path into an enemy stronghold, or the location of a lost temple. This skill challenge may take minutes, hours, days, or weeks, depending on the nature of the information they seek. So this would be a good challenge if you wanted something for, say, downtime activities or between adventuring activities. The party has gotten some clues to something, but they need to put together a missing piece. And they have some weeks before, or they have some element of time they can use to their advantage. And someone's saying, I want to go to the library and check this out. I'm going to do that. Well, instead you can say, okay, those of you who are going to try to figure out this missing piece, tell me how you're going to do it. And we're going to run that as a skill challenge. And these are the parameters of the challenge. And that way the part of the challenge could be one character going to the library. A part of another one could be, I have a contact over here. I'll go consult. And someone else says, I'm going to go over here. And it all becomes part of this group effort. So it seems like a good use of a skill challenge. And because it's downtime, it's not something you have to roll. You don't necessarily want to role play all these different things. You just want to get to the results. So then you just get to the results. So let's look at what they say. This one, they said at complexity 3, requiring 7 successes. And their primary skills they have are investigation, persuasion, and religion. It's interesting that they give you those primary skills, but then the skills they bullet point often include at least one that's not on the primary skill list. I don't know why, for example, history is the first bullet point, why history isn't a primary skill. I guess it's because here they call it very hard. So let's just get into it. History. Tough. The character stumbles upon a piece of information that sparks a memory, either of studies in the past, information shared by a mentor, or something they heard in passing. So that one's really difficult. But it's there. Investigation is moderate. The character visits a library and begins sifting through stacks of scrolls, tomes, and other documents in search of clues. On a failure, this location does not contain any useful information and cannot be used again. So that's an interesting fail, right? So if you go to the library and you investigate and you fail, not only do you not find anything, but essentially there's nothing to find. So the next person can't go back to the library to try to see if you missed it. It's not there. It's interesting because in a way that skill check actually changes the world. So I'm like, I'm in the Great Library of Alexandria. It's got to have information on the lost city of Troy. You get in there and I miss. Not only have I not found it, but now this has actually been set in the world that the Library of Alexandria has no information on the lost city of Troy. So anyone going back, don't bother. It's not going to be there. Persuasion they have is easy. The character visits an old sage or scholar to learn information that brings them closer to the answers they seek. This approach requires a payment for services. The cost should be high enough to inconvenience the characters, but not so much as to bankrupt them. So the idea is that, yeah, you're going to go spend some money. You're going to get some info. It shouldn't be a pittance. They should feel it. They should feel that cost. But it shouldn't be something that's impossible for them to pay or that essentially bankers them, takes all their money. And again, on a failure, not only does that NPC not know anything, but they're not available for anyone else. They just either they don't know or they leave on vacation, never to return. At least not while this challenge is ongoing. Religion, moderate DC. The character seeks out a temple or monastery to delve into religious lore or seek omens and the council of temple leaders. And the same thing on a failure cannot be used again. So essentially you got to think about what you're going to access, because if you access them and don't succeed, you've taken them out of the running. But also put some nice tension, because you have to think of new places. If you bomb out on, well, I guess if you bomb out on all those places, you've lost the challenge. But say that there is no sage, or you don't think of the sage, and you think, okay, we checked out the temples, we checked out the library. Now you have to really, you really need to think about what to do next. And maybe then, okay, maybe a sage. Maybe think of something else. Maybe you try to go to the local ruler. Maybe they have a private library, their own collection in the palace of materials, and do something there. So it's nice because it forces you to kind of keep moving. You can't just keep hammering the library. I'm just going to go back to the library. It's like, no, sorry. The library you used it up. You've done everything you can do. There is nothing more. You have to find another avenue. Total success. Gain the information you seek, and you do it in a pretty fast manner, in a timely manner. Whatever your timetable is, you meet it. Maybe you're even a little bit early. Mixed success. Gain the information they seek, but they have lost a lot of time. So if you succeed with some failures mixed in, you're behind. So if you thought we have 2 weeks to do this, if you succeed totally, you make it within the 2 weeks. If you get a mixed success, maybe you make it, but now it's been 3 or 4 weeks. If you fail, the characters gain the information they seek, but much of the information they have gathered is inaccurate and increases the challenges or leads them into an unfavorable situation in some way. I like that. Excuse me. So essentially, when you fail, you're going to get the information, but now instead of it being 100% accurate, maybe it's mostly inaccurate. And because we're trying to move things forward, it's probably not inaccurate in a way that takes them in the opposite direction, but it might be inaccurate in ways that are going to make it more difficult. Maybe instead of finding the best routes to a particular place, now they're going to be traveling routes that are monster infested, or that the enemy has gotten there first, something of that nature, right? Whatever they found, there's enough wrong with it that it might be accurate only in the broadest of strokes, and then all the details are all messed up and will lead them astray at every turn. You can have a lot of fun with that. That's good. I like it. So now we've seen an investigation, sort of a research skill challenge. We saw an environmental skill challenge. We saw a social skill challenge. Emergency surgery. Looks interesting, but I'll skip that one. Flooding chamber. That one's interesting. That one's sort of doing a trap. This is more of a... what is this one? What would we call this one? A flooding chamber. So it's a trap. I guess let me run this one, because traps are interesting. 5th edition doesn't have a lot of mechanics associated with traps other than just disarming them. A lot of people are very frustrated with traps as a thing because of I think people look at them as being not having much fictional grounding. If this corridor is being traversed over and over again, why would you put a pressure-sensitive pit trap in the middle of it, right? That sort of thing. And that's true to a certain extent. It can be it's definitely a different type of fiction. And sometimes, yeah, you'll just, traps will be dropped in places that if you thought about these locations as living spaces, why would you put a trap in your living room? Of course, if you've watched the Watchmen TV series, maybe there is a reason. I won't go in further details on that, why you might have a trap in your living room. But still, point taken. But if you look at a trap as something that is actually this type of skill challenge, in which case it's not just up to the rogue or one other person to do that, but the responsibility can fall onto everyone, and that everyone can potentially have tools to deal with the trap, then maybe it becomes something that you would embrace more. So let's see what they've got here. This one is called Flooding Chamber. Entering the octagonal chamber, you see a collection of corpses lying on the ground and what appears to be 2 large stone doors with fish head carvings exiting the chamber. You hear the clanking of gears followed by a crashing boom as a large stone door falls into place, blocking the entrance behind you. Suddenly, water begins gushing into the room through the fish heads, and the corpses rise and stalk towards you. Okay, so this is both a trap and a combat encounter, since you have undead popping up and you have the room flooding. That was the lead here in the setup. The characters trigger a pressure plate that seals off the chamber and begins to fill the area with water. In addition, the room contains 3 zombies. The party must fight off the zombies while trying to disable the trap before they drown. The zombies focus on grappling and slowing the characters. The room fills at initiative 20 every round. Regardless of the size of the room, the area is completely filled in 5 rounds unless the characters take action. The zombies in the room hold the keys that can stop the flow of water. Once all keys are used, the doors exiting the room open. Okay, so this will be interesting because in this one, the zombies, the combat portion is crucial to the trap portion, because the zombies hold the keys, need to get the keys from the zombies, unless they're going to talk about another way to do it, to get the doors open or to turn off the water and get the doors open. So they're calling this complexity 1. You only need 4 successes before you get 3 failures. Here they have the primary skills are listed as investigation, athletics, and sleight of hand. Let's get into those bullet points. Athletics, which they're saying is very hard. The character attempts to pry open one of the doors. If you succeed, it takes the time it takes for the room to fill. Okay, that's a little bit poorly written. So basically, if you succeed, it's going to take an additional 2 rounds to fill the room. You've bought yourself 2 more rounds. If you fail, the next time someone tries, it's even harder. So if you've gone from very hard, I'm not sure there's any room to go. Extremely hard? Devastatingly hard? Impossibly hard? If you investigate, that's a moderate DC. The character notices that the fish face carved into the stone doors appears to have a hinged jaw. A character who is battling a zombie with a passive perception of 14 spots a key inside its mouth. It's interesting that the passive perception part is put inside the investigation check. I would have that in the setup, because you'd think that they could notice that at any time and not just when somebody notices the hinge. But maybe that's the point, is that you notice the hinged jaw and you kind of call out, the jaws are hinged, and that kind of makes somebody else go, oh yeah, in their mouths they've got a key. So it's an interesting way to do it, but I might give them the perception, easier perception. Maybe I would say, okay, it's passive perception 16 before this, and then it's 14 after this, because it makes sense that once someone calls it out, you might pay attention to it. Thank you, Amazon. That was my Alexa bleeping, and then bleeping again. I'm not sure. Yeah, you're not sure. Well, if you heard that, she's not sure. I'm sure. But I would probably let somebody passive perceive or just make a perception check anyway. But that's interesting. So you see the hinged mouths, and you notice that there are keys inside the mouths. You can use perception itself, which is moderately difficult. Upon closer inspection of the stone door heads, a small keyhole can be seen inside the carving's gill. Okay, so the hinged jaw, the carved gill, these are telling you things about the puzzle. Sleight of hand, also moderate. The character attempts to prop the hinged jaws in the closed position with a dagger or the like. If you can do that, you can again slow the filling down, slowing the room filling by another 2 rounds. So Here you have a couple of interesting methods of slowing it down, but ultimately you need to get the keys. So I would definitely allow that past as perception outside of just investigation, because the keys are really the key. If you totally succeed, are you able to close out the flow of the water, open the doors? No problem. If it's a mixed success, close out the flow of the water, struggling to gather the keys and wading through the water, tired and exhausted from the struggle, each character loses 1 hit die and 1 small item washed away in the flood. They really like this losing hit dice. I would kind of just use exhaustion in that case, but I guess losing 1 hit die is a bit easier. You lose some hit points off your top end, but you're not getting disadvantage on a bunch of stuff. The small item's interesting. Get ready to roll that 1d100 or whatever it is, and depending on how much items in your inventory, and seeing what fell away. If you fail, you're pushed nearly to the point of drowning. The entire chamber is filled with water. Characters who can't breathe underwater are suffocating. They have a number of rounds to kill the remaining zombies, if not already dead. The characters find the keys and their mating keyholes and are able to drain the water. The characters all suffer a level of exhaustion. Alright, so there it is. So if you fail, but assuming you've killed the zombies, you can get all the keys, get out, but you're exhausted. That's a pretty interesting take, right? So that is one where they've mixed a trap as a skill challenge with this combat. Though clearly the zombies are not the big challenge in the room, it's kind of putting the pieces together. But I suppose that depends on the level of the party. A nice picture. All right, I'm going to skip in here. Let's see, we've got a stealth one, it looks like. So more skill checks. I want to see, let's see if there's anything else. I'm trying to think. We had the combat encounter. Have we hit all the different kinds of encounters? Lost in the forest. We got a magically sealed door. Let's see. Murder in the streets. Another sort of investigative skill check. I'm trying to see if there's any other types. I'm trying to hit every kind of main type of skill check. So we hit a combat / trap. We hit an environment. We hit a social. We hit an investigation. So I'm wondering if there are any other kinds of skill checks here. River rapids. Weather in the storm. This seems pretty similar to the blizzard we already looked at. Here they have a different section. Let's just read a little bit of this. Fantastic terrain and traps. The world of D&D is full of magic, monsters, and divine power. These wondrous sources can cause fantastic terrain to form. Chaotic energies can suffuse the air where a powerful planar portal was opened, sending random bursts of uncontrolled magic in all directions. Powerful ritual circles can enhance the effect of dark magic of an evil wizard, or a chamber flooded with water could dampen the effect of fire magic. Using the task scale difficulty above, on page 6, you can adjust the difficulty of these fantastic terrains to easily fit any party level. It's okay, so we have some examples here. Is that called choke forest? Choke frost. This deadly frost is most often found in icy caves upon the spine of the world, or in the lair of powerful creatures who shroud themselves in the chill of winter's breeze, such as yetis, ice devils, ice elementals, or white dragons. This white mist hardens as ice, hard as a crystal, and saps the strength of creatures who stand upon its surface, slowly turning their flesh blue as it drains their warmth. Each time a creature enters an area of choke frost, or ends its turn there, it must succeed on a moderate DC Constitution saving throw or lose 1 hit die. A creature who has cold resistance has advantage on the check, and creatures immune to cold ignore this effect. I like that. Choke frost. It's certainly something that I would adapt for hex crawls. I could say, okay, this area is in choke frost, and I would probably not have it in turns like this, but maybe hours, or maybe say for every half day, or every so-and-so moving through this frost, you have to make that check. But, I mean, if you could have it every hour, it would just make it really tough, because every time you lose a saving throw, you're going to drop hit dice. Very easy to pass out if you're low levels, but maybe that's the point. Let's go on to the next one here on this page. Defiled ground. This is the site of a dark necromancer's powerful ritual. or an area of ceremonial sacrifice. The stench of death fills the bloody area of any size, attracting spirits. A creature who's standing on defiled ground. Yeah, they got to fix those verbs a bit there. And casts a necromancy spell of first level or higher. The effect is empowered as if the spell was cast one level higher than the spell slot used, up to 9th level, and increasing the spell save DC by 1. So this is cool. It's very simple. Nothing really to it other than, hey, this ground is particularly sensitive if you're casting necromancy. Spells of the necromancy school, you get a free little bump up in power, and they are made more difficult to resist. Clearly, if you have necromancers in your party, they would love to hang out on defiled ground. If you have NPC necromancer characters running around, this would be a great spot for them to put their wizard tower or abode, since their spells will naturally be more powerful. I don't want to just go over all of these. Let's see what else they have. All right, so they have some traps. Let's see what they say about complex traps. Adventuring into a dungeon or a mad... Oh boy, another spelling error. A mad mage's tower is full of inherent risk, not only from the dangerous monsters that reside inside, but also from the collection of dangerous traps put in place to keep unwanted visitors out. One wrong step in a dusty old tomb could trigger a series of thrusting spears or scything blades that can cleave a fully armored knight in twain. They said entwine, but I believe they mean in twain. Monsters aren't the only danger to our adventurers. Some traps can easily be dealt with by a rogue with simple knowledge of their tools, but some are much more complex and require a series of steps in order to disarm. Alright, so it looks like we had that trap encounter before. They're going to give us some more traps, which is good. Let's see. Ooh, I like the sound of this one. White Dragon Breath Torrent. It's a complex trap. Level 1 to 5, this is a deadly threat for them. 2 small, intricately carved dragon statues gaze at you menacingly, maws wide open. You spot a flickering blue light deep in the back of their throats, moments before a torrent of cold air bursts forth, covering you in frost. The dragon statues are often placed at the entrance to a main chamber or to defend a valuable treasure. The trigger is the statues, when a creature comes within 20 feet of them without speaking the command word. Open sesame, or, bell. The statues each make an attack immediately as a reaction. Each creature in a 30-foot cone must make a DC 18, Constitution saving throw, taking 22 4d10 cold damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. That will hurt. Yes, that will hurt your level 1 to 5 parties. That could just decimate the entire group if they happen to be poorly positioned when that goes off. The trap activates on initiative count 20 and initiative count 10 each round. Whoosh. It's not only a one-time thing, but it's just going to keep coming at you. So you either say the command word, it's become completely frozen, or, you run away Monty Python style. So here's some things you can do. So you got this trap, wicked nasty. You can use Wisdom, DC 16. That will allow you to detect the magical rune on the inside of the dragon's maw. But how close do you have to be to do that? Because it seems like that one's you got to be right up in there because it's inside its mouth. But maybe you just have to treat that as a situational choice. So you're gonna have to dip, dodge, dive, duck, and dodge your way up there, and then you can look in the mouth. Obviously, looking at it not when it's going off at initiative 10 or 20. Intelligence, DC 17, investigation. You can deduce the statues are unable to move with a successful check, creating a safe spot behind them. But of course, you have to get behind them. So presuming that these aren't on a wall, which is where I would have thought maybe they would be, if they were on columns or some other raised pillars, you recognize you can get to the other side of them. Do you really need an investigation check to tell you that? More like I would say maybe you can find the spots where the cones, if you're able to watch it go off a couple times, you could see, okay, here's the safe spot, and get kind of beyond the cones of their attack. There's another DC 17 investigation check. that would allow you to notice a collection of magical glyphs on the floor. Now that's one that seems more valuable. With a successful check, they are able to identify the glyphs as a command word. As a command word protected glyph that is triggering the trap. So if you're able to read those, that seems like should be number one. You can read the command word as the glyph on the floor, or at least you'll read a word that's in glyphs, and if you say it, they'll stop spouting out cold death. Here we have some countermeasures you can take. A creature adjacent to the statue can attempt to deactivate it between bursts of the icy torrents. A successful DC 15 dex check using Thieves' Tools allows a character to jam a nozzle inside the statue's mouth with ball bearings or rocks, halting its function for 3 rounds, at which point it explodes, dealing its damage in a 20-foot radius sphere. The powerful arcane magic can be removed on one of the statues by Dispel Magic. Excellent use of Dispel Magic. A creature can discover the command word from an enemy guard or force a hostage to speak it. If you've got that's a good reason to keep somebody around. As a general rule, right? They might know things about the terrain, about what's happening. That will be a good one. Of course, that same hostage might try to lead you into the statues. Though maybe if he's out front, or it is out front, or they are out front, they might be less likely to want to get fried, or in this case, frozen first. A creature with spellcasting can engage in an intelligence arcana skill challenge to rewrite the magical glyphs to alter the command word to one of their choosing. 3 successes before 2 failures. That's a cool little mini skill challenge there. I'm not sure how you do that. Does just having arcana skill let you write glyphs? Is that a 5th edition thing? You can write glyphs just with having skill? Success, they change the command word to one of their choosing. Failure, the arcane energy tied to this glyph backlashes into the caster and they lose 2 hit dice. Ouch. I like that. So they've given you a trap. They've given you what triggers it, what it does, given you some ways to get to the bottom of it, and they've given you some ways to deal with it. Some of it might use some thinking about it, or at least having some options before you get there, such as having a hostage, but it is a good reason to maybe encourage your party to have hostages. If those hostages can tell you about those traps or help you deactivate them before you get frozen by them. That's very good. And that looks like that is the end of it. So you're in the Crit Academy. They got some other stuff. There is the back of the book. All right, so I will finish this up by, let's see. So what are my final thoughts on this? It's a good book. Again, I'm not the biggest skill challenge guy in the world, but I think they certainly have value. And I think I have not seen the book on which they based this or what they were building off of. So it'll be interesting to take a look at that one. Maybe I'll see if I can get a hold of it, see what that person does. But as far as what they have presented here, I think it looks like they give a pretty good width and breadth of things to use these skill challenges for. And I think you can look at each one of those, and certainly the ones that I looked at in the stream, as examples of types. And then you can then take those. So we went over the one that they had about a blizzard. You could easily change that to any other kind of storm. We had the trapped room with the monsters in it, and you could take that same thing. And they even talk about the beginning. They had an example with poison gas. Then the one in one they wrote up in the book was about water filling up. You could easily take that and adjust it for lots of different things, and even that complex trap with the white dragon heads, you could take that and tweak it to be any kind of different trap. But I like the fact that they have the traps, and maybe I won't say they focus the book on traps, but giving that element, because I think traps are sort of a forgotten piece of dungeon building in the modern game, and this maybe will give you some ways to look at traps a little bit differently, and look at ways you can engage your whole party in traps. I like that they were able to mixing the skill challenges in combat. It's an interesting way to do it. I don't know how often I would use that method, but it's certainly interesting. And what I like about it is that it does make it transparent on the players. Zombies are attacking you, and you're going to need X amount of successes. And that way they really know it's not about... It's very clear to them then what they need to do. We got to take care of the zombies or whatever the enemy is, and we have to get these successes over here. Sometimes it can be a little opaque when you're trying to stay in the fiction, and you have this thing where you have different moving parts going. Maybe you say, oh, I'm losing some immersion by making it a skill challenge. And yeah, maybe you are. I mean, you can obviously phrase it however you want to try to preserve more of the immersion, but I think At some point, immersion is not as important as making everything clear, making sure that everybody knows what they're doing, because it's very frustrating if these things go south and you realize afterwards that you and the DM, or the DM, you and the players weren't on the same page with what they had to do. And the skill challenge, I think, for the most part, make it clear. Here's at least the case saying, here's what you have to do. Now, how you do it, get from A to B, you're going to have to figure that out. But at least you know what B is, what that endpoint is, and you know kind of what sorts of things you'll have to do it. So overall, I think it's a good book. Let me see. I'll try to pull it up. I don't know how much it is on DM Academy. Or sorry, on DM's Guild. Let's see if I can pull it up really quick. DM's Guild. But yeah, no, I dig it. Crit Academy, you did a good job. I wish I had gotten to this earlier. And my apologies for that. Okay, here we go. On the DM's Guild. $5. $5. The book is 36 pages long, and probably 33 or 30 of those maybe between the intros and stuff, and everything on the back end is mostly the skill challenges and then those traps. I really dig the traps. That might be my biggest takeaway, is actually the traps part. I just really like it. I think anything to bring traps back, and I like the terrain parts too. I think the terrain, certainly maybe I'll even do more with that, looking at adapting that for hex crawls and whatnot. I think that the having the ability to have these really interesting terrains that are special, maybe magic, but have something else going on and that create interesting challenges for you, super good. And it's kind of a hidden bonus, because I wasn't expecting that out of this particular book. I think maybe if they wanted to, they could probably do more material about that. I think it's worth looking at that, maybe outside of skill challenges, but just as different things. Excellent material. So hats off to you, Crit Academy. This gets a thumbs up. Thumbs up from me. And just from my standpoint, if you enjoyed this, please, give me a thumbs up, give me a like, subscribe where you find it, usually on YouTube, or if you're listening to this in podcast form via Spreaker or whatever, if you're getting it through whatever your podcast consuming app is, please, it helps me out a lot when you get this. It gives me some feedback on what I'm doing. Hopefully I'm doing it right. If I'm doing it wrong, please let me know. If there's other things you want me to cover, if you're interested in skill challenges and you're looking for more, I'm happy to do it. But that's all I have on Challenge Accepted. The link for it is in the show notes. I will try to dive back into my pile of things to do, and I'll pull up something else, hopefully in the next few days. But thanks so much for watching, and I will talk to you later.